The black SUVs rolled down Maple Crest Avenue like sharks cutting through still water. No sirens, no lights. Just the low growl of reinforced engines and tinted windows that swallowed reflections whole. Neighbors froze mid-step. A jogger pulled out her earbuds. Two vehicles, military grade, stopping in perfect sync outside a modest two-story colonial, where, minutes earlier, a young woman in scrubs had been told she didn't belong. Officer Jason Cole stood in the driveway, one hand still resting on his belt, confidence draining from his face as six figures in tactical black stepped out in unison. The lead operator didn't glance at Cole, didn't acknowledge the patrol car blocking the garage. He walked straight to the woman, the nurse Cole had just ordered off her own property, and executed a textbook salute. Sharp, clean, deliberate. The street went dead quiet. And Claire Whitmore, exhausted from a 12-hour ER shift, finally let out the breath she'd been holding since this nightmare started. If you want to see how far this story can travel, stick with me until the very end. Drop a like, leave a comment with the city you're watching from, and let's see just how wide this truth spreads. Claire Whitmore had learned a long time ago that silence was a weapon. Not the kind that cut quick and loud, but the kind that settled into a room and made people second-guess themselves. She used it now, standing in her own driveway at 7:43 on a Tuesday morning, still wearing the navy scrubs from her overnight shift at Silver Ridge General. Her keys dangled from one hand. Her canvas work bag hung off her shoulder. And Officer Jason Cole stood 3 feet away, jaw set, eyes scanning her like she was a suspect in a crime she didn't know she'd committed. "I'm going to need you to step back from the vehicle," Cole said. His voice had that flat, rehearsed quality, like he'd said the line 100 times and stopped thinking about what it meant. Claire didn't move. "This is my car." "Ma'am, we received a call about suspicious activity at this address." Suspicious activity. She repeated it slowly, letting the words sit between them. "I live here." Cole's partner, a younger officer with a buzz cut and a name tag that read Brennan, shifted his weight near the patrol car. He wasn't talking, but his hand stayed close to his radio. That told Claire everything she needed to know about how this was going to go. "Do you have identification?" Cole asked. Claire pulled her hospital badge from her scrub pocket and held it up. "Claire Whitmore, registered nurse, Silver Ridge General ER. I just finished a 12-hour shift and I'd like to go inside my house." Cole barely glanced at it. "That's not proof of residency." "Then run my name through your system." Her tone stayed level, calm. The kind of calm that came from practice, not patience. "You'll see I own this property, titles in my name, mortgage payments current, tax records on file. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to cooperate." "I am cooperating. I'm standing here answering your questions, showing you my ID. What I'm not doing is leaving my own driveway because someone made a phone call." Brennan finally spoke up. "We're just trying to verify the situation." Claire turned to him. "Then verify it. Pull up the county records. It'll take you 30 seconds. Cole stepped forward, closing the gap. "Ma'am, your attitude isn't helping." That was the moment Claire felt the shift. The air tightened. Her pulse stayed steady, but her awareness sharpened, the way it used to when she was kneeling in sand with a trauma kit and gunfire cracking overhead. She recognized the look in Cole's eyes. It wasn't suspicion. It was certainty. He'd already decided who she was, and nothing she said was going to change that. "My attitude," she said quietly, "is tired. I've been on my feet for 12 hours. I stitched up a kid who came in with a stab wound at 3 this morning. I held a woman's hand while she died because her family didn't make it in time. And now I'm standing in my own driveway being interrogated because someone looked out their window and decided I didn't belong here." Cole didn't blink. "Step away from the vehicle." Claire's fingers tightened around her keys. She could feel the neighbors watching now, curtains shifting, phones rising. Mrs. Castellano from 2 doors down had come out onto her porch, arms crossed. Mr. Eng was standing by his mailbox, pretending to check for letters he'd already collected an hour ago. "I'm not going anywhere," Claire said. "Then we have a problem." Brennan moved closer, flanking her from the left. 2 officers, 1 woman in scrubs. The math wasn't complicated. Claire's phone buzzed in her pocket. She didn't reach for it. "Ma'am, if you don't comply, I will place you in custody for obstruction." "Obstruction of what?" "I haven't broken any laws." "You're refusing a lawful order." You haven't given me a lawful order. You've made an assumption, and now you're trying to enforce it without doing the basic work of confirming whether you're right. Cole's jaw tightened. Last warning. Claire looked past him, toward the patrol car. Its lights weren't on, but the engine was running. Brennan had positioned himself so she couldn't move toward her front door without going through him. Classic containment. She'd seen it before. Different uniforms, different country, same logic. You're making a mistake, she said. We'll sort it out at the station. That was when the rumble started. Low at first, almost subliminal, a vibration more than a sound. Claire felt it in her chest before she heard it, the kind of engine noise that didn't come from civilian vehicles. Cole frowned, glancing toward the street. Two black SUVs turned onto Maple Crest Avenue. No lights, no sirens. Just smooth, deliberate movement like they'd been tracking a GPS beacon and arrived exactly when they meant to. They stopped in front of Claire's house with the kind of precision that made Brennan take an involuntary step back. The doors opened in sync. 6 figures stepped out, tactical black, no visible insignia, movements controlled and economical. Not police, not private security. Something else. The lead operator was a woman in her mid-40s, lean and sharp-eyed with close-cropped silver hair and the kind of posture that came from decades of carrying weight most people never had to think about. She walked straight past Cole like he was a piece of furniture and stopped in front of Claire. Her right hand came up in a crisp salute. "Ma'am," she said, "command has been trying to reach you." Claire's shoulders dropped half an inch. "You picked a bad morning for this, Reyes." Reyes lowered her hand but didn't relax. "We don't pick the mornings. We respond to them." Cole found his voice. "Excuse me, who the hell are you?" Reyes didn't turn. "Captain Elena Reyes, 5th Medical Operations Group, Joint Base Creston. And you are?" "Officer Jason Cole, Silver Ridge PD. This is an active police matter." "Not anymore, it's not." Brennan stepped forward. "Ma'am, with all due respect." "You don't have any respect to give," Reyes cut in. "You just threatened to arrest a decorated combat medic and former field unit commander in her own driveway. So no, officer, you don't get to talk right now." The street went silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Cole's face went red. "I was responding to a call. From who?" Reyes's voice stayed level, but the edge in it could have split stone. "Someone who saw a woman in scrubs pulling into her own garage and decided that was suspicious? Someone who looked at her and decided she didn't fit?" Claire finally spoke. "Reyes, stand down." Reyes glanced at her. "With respect, ma'am, no." Claire sighed. "I'm not active duty anymore. You can't pull rank here." "I'm not pulling rank. I'm making a point." Reyes turned back to Cole. "Do you know what a Silver Star is, officer?" Cole said nothing. "It's a military decoration for valor in combat, the 3rd highest honor the U.S. Armed Forces can award. Miss Whitmore earned one by keeping 11 soldiers alive under sustained enemy fire while her base was being overrun. She performed field surgeries with a collapsed lung and a fractured wrist because the medevac couldn't land and her team was bleeding out. She saved lives that night while people like you were asleep in your beds." Brennan looked at Claire, then at Cole, then back at Reyes. "We didn't know." "You didn't ask," Reyes said. "You saw what you wanted to see, and you acted on it. That's not police work. That's prejudice with a badge." Cole's hand moved toward his radio. Reyes didn't flinch, but 2 of the operators behind her shifted. Barely perceptible, but enough to make Cole freeze. "Don't," Reyes said quietly. "You've already made enough mistakes today." A second patrol car turned onto the street, moving faster than the first. It stopped behind Cole's vehicle, and a man in a white shirt with sergeant stripes stepped out. He took one look at the scene: 2 SUVs, tactical personnel, Claire standing calm in the center of it all, and his expression went from confused to horrified in the span of 3 seconds. "Cole," he said, "what the hell is going on?" "Sergeant Park," Cole started. "We responded to a suspicious person call." "At this address?" Park's voice rose half an octave. "You responded to a call at this address?" Cole hesitated. "Yes, sir." Park walked straight to Claire. "Ms. Whitmore, I am so sorry. I don't know who called this in, but I can promise you we're going to find out and handle it." Claire just looked at him. "You know who I am." "Ma'am, the whole department knows who you are." You pulled 2 of our officers out of a wreck on Route 7 last year. One of them was my nephew. Cole's face went pale. Park turned to him. Badge. Now. Sergeant. Now, Cole. Cole unclipped his badge with shaking hands and held it out. Park took it, then looked at Brennan. You too. I didn't. You stood there and let it happen. That's the same thing. Brennan handed over his badge without another word. Park turned back to Claire. I don't know what to say except this is unacceptable, and it's going to be dealt with, internally and publicly. Claire nodded once. I just want to go inside. Of course. Park stepped aside. Reyes, I assume you're not here for a social call. Reyes glanced at Claire. We need 10 minutes. Claire pulled her keys from her pocket and walked toward the front door. Reyes followed. The rest of the tactical team stayed outside, silent and watchful, as Cole and Brennan stood frozen in the driveway like statues waiting to be torn down. Inside, the house was quiet. Claire dropped her bag on the kitchen counter and filled a glass with water from the tap. She drank it slowly, staring out the window at the patrol cars and the SUVs and the neighbors who were still watching, phones out, recording everything. Reyes stood by the door. You okay? No. Fair answer. Claire set the glass down. Why are you here, Reyes? Command flagged your address when the police dispatch went through our monitoring network. We run algorithms on certain keywords: veteran, military, service history. When we saw your name attached to a suspicious person call, we rolled out. You didn't have to. Yeah, we did. Reyes crossed her arms. You served 8 years, 3 deployments, field medicine under fire. You trained half the medics currently deployed in the 6th Brigade. And when you left, you didn't ask for anything. No publicity, no favors, no recognition. You just went quiet. That's what I wanted. I know, but the people you trained, they don't forget. The soldiers you saved, they don't forget. And when someone like you gets treated like a criminal in your own driveway, we don't let that slide. Claire turned to face her. I don't need a rescue. I know that too. But sometimes it's not about need. It's about making sure the people who matter know there are consequences. Outside, another vehicle pulled up. A news van, satellite dish on the roof, camera crew already climbing out. Claire watched them set up on the sidewalk, framing shots of the patrol cars and the SUVs and the crowd that was starting to gather. This is going to be everywhere by tonight, Claire said. Good, Reyes replied. Let them see it. Let them see what happens when someone makes assumptions. Claire didn't respond. She just stood there, staring at the street, at the officers who'd tried to remove her, at the house she'd bought with her own money and filled with her own things and defended with her own silence. Reyes waited a beat, then spoke again. You ever think about coming back? No? Not even consultant work? Training rotations? No. You're one of the best we ever had. I did my time. Claire's voice was quiet but firm. I saved the people I could. I lost the ones I couldn't, and when I left because I needed to be someone else for a while. And now? Claire turned to look at her. Now I'm a nurse. I work the ER. I stitch people up and send them home, and I don't have to think about who sent the artillery or whether the medevac's going to make it in time. That's enough. Reyes nodded slowly. Understood. They stood in silence for a moment, the low hum of voices and engines filtering through the walls. Finally, Reyes spoke. For what it's worth, you handled that better than I would have. Claire almost smiled. You would have decked him. Damn right I would have. That's why you're still active and I'm not. Reyes gave a short laugh. Fair. She moved toward the door, then paused. We'll stay out there until the press clears and the department finishes their internal report, just in case. You don't have to do that. I know, but we will anyway. Reyes left and Claire was alone again. She walked upstairs, pulled off her scrubs, and stood in the shower until the water ran cold. When she came back down, the news van was still there, but the patrol cars were gone. The SUVs remained, parked like sentries, their crews standing easy but alert. Claire made coffee. She sat at the kitchen table and opened her laptop. Her email inbox had 43 new messages, most from coworkers at the hospital, a few from old service buddies who'd seen the dispatch alerts, one from her mortgage lender asking if everything was okay. She didn't answer any of them. Not yet. Instead, she pulled up the county property records and downloaded a copy of her deed. She printed it, folded it neatly, and placed it in a drawer by the front door, just in case anyone ever asked again. By midday, the street had mostly cleared. The news crew packed up and left. The neighbors went back inside. Reyes and her team climbed into the SUVs and drove away, though Claire knew they'd be monitoring the situation remotely for days. Claire sat on her front porch with a second cup of coffee, watching the afternoon light slant across the lawn. Her phone buzzed again. This time she looked. It was a text from Dr. Patel. Her supervising physician at the hospital saw the news. "You okay?" Claire typed back. "Fine. See you tomorrow. Take the day if you need it." "I'm fine." She put the phone down and closed her eyes. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. A car door slammed. Life moved on, the way it always did. But something had shifted. Claire could feel it in the air, in the way the sunlight seemed sharper, the silence heavier. This wasn't over. The news coverage would spread. The department would launch an investigation. Lawyers would get involved. And somewhere, in an office she'd never see, someone would be making calls to ensure this kind of thing didn't happen again. Or they'd try to bury it. Claire didn't know which yet. But she knew one thing. She wasn't going anywhere. Not from this house, not from this street, not from the life she'd built when she traded her combat boots for scrubs and decided that saving lives didn't always require a war zone. Her phone buzzed a third time. Another text, this one from a number she didn't recognize. "This is Sergeant Park. I wanted to reach out personally. We're opening a formal investigation into today's incident. I'll need a statement from you when you're ready." "No rush. And again, I'm sorry." Claire stared at the message for a long moment. Then she typed, "I'll come in tomorrow. Thank you." She set the phone aside and leaned back in the chair. The street was quiet again, the kind of quiet that felt fragile, like glass stretched too thin, waiting for the next crack. And somewhere, miles away, in a conference room with fluorescent lights and bad coffee, Officer Jason Cole was learning exactly what it felt like when the person you underestimated turned out to be someone you should have never crossed. Cole sat in a windowless conference room at the Silver Ridge Police Department headquarters, staring at the grain pattern in the fake wood table. His badge sat in an evidence bag on the opposite side, tagged and logged like contraband. Across from him, Internal Affairs investigator Linda Fisk flipped through pages on a tablet, her expression unreadable. "Walk me through it again," Fisk said. Not a request. Cole shifted in his seat. "We got a call. Suspicious person at 847 Maple Crest. Dispatch said a neighbor reported someone trying to access a residence that didn't match the homeowner profile." "And what was the homeowner profile?" Cole hesitated. "The caller said the house belonged to an older couple, the Hendersons. They'd lived there for 20 years before selling last spring." "So you arrived expecting to find what? A burglar?" "Someone who didn't belong there." Fisk set the tablet down. "Claire Whitmore purchased that property 8 months ago, paid cash. Title transferred cleanly, property taxes current. Her name's been on every utility bill since August. You're telling me you didn't check any of that before you confronted her?" "I asked for ID." "You asked after you'd already decided she was lying." Fisk leaned forward. "Body cam footage shows you escalated within 90 seconds of arrival. You threatened arrest before you ran a single database query. Why?" Cole didn't answer. "Officer Cole, this is not a trick question. I'm trying to understand your decision-making process." "She was hostile." Fisk's eyebrows rose slightly. "Hostile. She showed you her hospital badge, told you to run her name, and stood in her own driveway. That's hostile?" Her tone. Fisk tapped the tablet screen. "Let me read you something. Direct quote from your body cam. Ma'am, your attitude isn't helping." This is after she'd already identified herself and asked you to verify property ownership. What exactly about her attitude concerned you? Cole's jaw tightened. "I was doing my job." "Your job is to verify information and de-escalate situations. You did neither." Fisk swiped to another page. "Do you know how many complaints have been filed against you in the past 18 months? "I don't know. A few." 7. All involving interactions with residents in predominantly white neighborhoods who questioned why certain individuals were present. 5 of those complaints were dismissed due to lack of evidence. 2 are still under review. People call in suspicious activity all the time. I respond. And every time you respond, you assume the person being reported is guilty of something. Fisk's voice stayed level, clinical. That's not police work. That's profiling. Cole's hands curled into fists under the table. I don't profile. Then explain to me why you threatened to arrest a decorated military veteran in her own driveway without running a single background check. Silence filled the room. Outside, phones rang. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Somewhere a printer whirred to life. Fisk closed the tablet. You're suspended without pay pending the outcome of this investigation. If the evidence supports what I think it does, you'll be terminated and barred from law enforcement in this state. Do you understand? Cole nodded once. Say it out loud. I understand. Good. You're dismissed. Cole stood and walked out. The hallway was too bright, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like insects trapped in glass. Officers he'd worked with for years looked away as he passed. No one said anything. No one had to. By the time he reached the parking lot, his phone was already vibrating. Texts from his union rep, missed calls from his wife, a voicemail from a reporter at the Silver Ridge Tribune asking for comment. He ignored all of it and drove home in silence, gripping the wheel hard enough to leave marks. Across town, Claire was sitting in Dr. Patel's office at Silver Ridge General, staring at a cup of coffee she hadn't touched. Patel stood by the window, arms crossed, watching the afternoon shift change in the parking lot below. You don't have to talk about it, Patel said. But I want you to know the administration is backing you. Legal's already drafting a statement. HR's flagged your file to make sure nothing from this morning affects your standing here. I'm fine, Claire said. Patel turned to look at her. You're not fine. You got harassed by police in your own driveway, and the whole thing's on video. That's not fine. I've dealt with worse. That's not the point. Patel moved to the desk and sat down. You're one of the best nurses we have. You stay calm under pressure. You don't rattle. But this is different. Claire met her eyes. How? Because it's public. Because it's personal. And because people are going to have opinions. Let them, Patel sighed. Claire, I've known you for 3 years. You're quiet. You don't talk about your past. You show up, do the work, and go home. I respect that. But this is going to bring attention you didn't ask for. I know. And you're okay with that? Claire thought about the question. Was she okay with it? With the news vans and the interviews and the inevitable flood of people who'd want to know her story, pick it apart, decide whether she was a hero or a victim, or just someone who got caught in a bad situation. No, she finally said. But I don't get to choose whether it happens. Patel nodded slowly. Fair enough. But if you need time off, take it. If you need to talk to someone, the hospital has counselors. And if you need me to run interference with the press, I will. I appreciate it. Good. Patel stood. Now get out of here. You look like hell. Claire almost smiled. Thanks. She left the office and walked through the ER, past the nurses' station where her coworkers tried not to stare, past the waiting room where a mother held a crying toddler, past the ambulance bay where paramedics were unloading a stretcher. Normal chaos. The kind she understood. Outside, the sky was overcast, low clouds pressing down like a ceiling. Claire pulled her jacket tighter and headed toward the employee parking lot. Her car was where she'd left it that morning, back row, under a broken streetlight. She unlocked the door and slid inside, resting her forehead against the steering wheel for a moment before starting the engine. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She let it go to voicemail. It rang again. Same number. She answered. Hello? Ms. Whitmore, this is David Crane. I'm an attorney with Morrison and Hale. I represent clients in civil rights cases, and I'd like to discuss what happened this morning. Claire closed her eyes. I'm not interested. I understand this is overwhelming, but what happened to you is part of a larger pattern, and there are legal remedies available. I said I'm not interested. Ms. Whitmore, she hung up. The phone rang again immediately. She powered it off and tossed it into the passenger seat. The drive home took 12 minutes. When she turned onto Maple Crest Avenue, the street looked normal again. No patrol cars, no SUVs, no cameras. Just houses and lawns and mailboxes. Mrs. Castellano was watering her garden. Mr. Eng was washing his car. Everything back to routine, like the morning had been a glitch in the system, already smoothed over and forgotten. Claire pulled into her driveway and killed the engine. She sat there for a moment, staring at the front door, trying to summon the energy to go inside. A knock on her window made her jump. Mrs. Castellano stood outside, holding a casserole dish covered in foil. Claire rolled down the window. "I made too much," Mrs. Castellano said. Not quite an apology, not quite an explanation. Claire took the dish. "Thank you. What happened this morning?" Mrs. Castellano stopped, searching for words. "That was wrong." Claire nodded. "If you need anything, I'm 2 doors down." "I know." Mrs. Castellano walked away, and Claire carried the casserole inside. She set it on the counter, still warm, smelling like garlic and cheese, and something else she couldn't identify. She stood there for a long time, just staring at it, before finally putting it in the fridge. The house felt too quiet, too empty. She turned on the TV for background noise and flipped to a local news channel. A reporter stood in front of the police department, microphone in hand, talking about accountability and reform and the need for better training. Claire changed the channel, a rerun of some medical drama. She left it on and sat down on the couch. Sleep didn't come. She knew it wouldn't. Instead, she lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the scripted beeps and alarms from the TV hospital that never felt anything like the real thing. Her phone powered back on at some point. She must have hit the button without realizing. Notifications flooded in, texts, emails, missed calls. She scrolled through them without reading, deleting most, archiving the rest. One message made her pause, a text from a number she recognized but hadn't heard from in 2 years. Saw what happened. "You good?" It was from Marcus Lang, her old platoon sergeant. The last time they'd spoken, it was at a retirement ceremony she'd attended out of obligation, not sentiment. He'd tried to convince her to stay in. She'd declined. They'd shaken hands and gone their separate ways. She typed back, "Yeah. You?" The reply came fast. "Same shit, different day. You need anything?" "No." Liar. Claire set the phone down and closed her eyes. The TV droned on. Somewhere outside, a dog barked. Life moving forward, indifferent and relentless. The next morning, Claire walked into Sergeant Park's office at the police department with a printed copy of her statement. Park stood when she entered, gesturing to a chair. She didn't sit. "I'll keep this short," she said. "I was parked in my driveway. Officer Cole approached and immediately assumed I didn't belong there. I showed identification. He dismissed it. I asked him to verify property records. He refused. He threatened arrest. That's when your people showed up." Park listened without interrupting. When she finished, he nodded. "We've reviewed the body cam footage. It confirms everything you just said." "Good. Miss Whitmore, I want to be very clear about something. What happened to you was unacceptable. Officer Cole has been suspended, and based on the evidence, I expect he'll be terminated. But I also want to make sure you have every resource available to you. Legal support, counseling, whatever you need." "I don't need anything from you." Park's expression didn't change. "I understand, but the offer stands." Claire placed the statement on his desk. "Is there anything else?" "No. You're free to go." She walked out without another word. The building felt wrong, sterile and overlit, filled with people in uniforms who looked at her like she was something fragile that might break if handled incorrectly. She hated it. Outside, a reporter approached with a camera crew in tow. "Ms. Whitmore, can we ask you a few questions about—" "No. Just a quick statement." Claire kept walking. The reporter didn't follow. Back at the hospital that afternoon, the ER was slammed. A multi-car pileup on the interstate had sent 8 people in at once, and the waiting room was overflowing. Claire moved through it like muscle memory, triage, vitals, intake, stabilization, blood pressure cuffs and IV lines, and the controlled chaos of too many people needing help at the same time. A young guy came in holding his arm at an awkward angle, face pale and sweating. Claire got him into a bay and started cutting away his jacket sleeve. "Motorcycle?" she asked. "Yeah, some asshole ran a red light." "You wearing a helmet?" "Of course." "Good." She palpated the arm gently. "Feels like a fracture. We'll get x-rays. You on any medications?" "No." "Allergies?" "Penicillin." She made a note on the chart. "Sit tight. Doctor will be in soon." "Thanks." She moved to the next bay. An older woman with chest pain, stable but scared. Claire ran an EKG, asked the standard questions, kept her voice calm and even. It was easier here, simpler. People came in broken, and you tried to fix them. No assumptions, no history, just the immediate present and the work that needed doing. By the time her shift ended, the sun was setting. Claire clocked out and walked to her car, muscles aching, mind blank from exhaustion. She drove home on autopilot, barely registering the turns. When she pulled into her driveway, there was an envelope taped to her front door. She grabbed it, went inside, and opened it at the kitchen table. Inside was a handwritten letter on expensive stationery. Ms. Whitmore, my name is Jonathan Voss. I'm a senior partner at Keller, Voss & Associates. I specialize in civil litigation, particularly cases involving abuse of authority and civil rights violations. I've reviewed the public information regarding the incident on April 16th, and I believe you have a strong case for legal action against both Officer Cole and the Silver Ridge Police Department. I'm not asking for a decision today. I'm simply offering my services if you decide to pursue this. My contact information is below. No obligation, no pressure. Respectfully, Jonathan Voss. Claire set the letter down and stared at it for a long time. Outside, the streetlights flickered on. Night settled over the neighborhood like a blanket, soft and smothering. She thought about Cole, sitting in some room waiting to learn whether his career was over. She thought about the body cam footage, probably circulating online by now, racking up views and comments and opinions from people who'd never met her. She thought about Reyes and the tactical team, standing in her driveway like sentries, making a point she hadn't asked them to make. And she thought about the caller, the anonymous neighbor who'd looked out a window, seen her pulling into her own garage, and decided that was worth a 911 call. That was the part that kept circling back. Not Cole, not the confrontation, but the person who'd started it, still out there, unnamed and unaccountable. Claire pulled out her laptop and opened the county's public records database. Property transfers, tax records, permit applications, all publicly accessible. She typed in her address and pulled up the history. The Hendersons had sold in August. Before that, they'd owned the house for 23 years. She scrolled through the records, looking for anything that might indicate who'd made the call. Nothing jumped out. No obvious names, no recent disputes, no liens or complaints. She widened the search, pulling up records for the surrounding houses. Most had been owned by the same families for decades. A few had changed hands in the past 5 years, but nothing unusual. She was about to close the laptop when she noticed something. A property 3 doors down, 856 Maple Crest, had filed a noise complaint 6 months ago. The complaint had been dismissed, but the filing was public record. The name on the complaint, Gregory Haynes. Claire pulled up a separate search and cross-referenced the name with the 911 call logs. Those weren't public, but she knew someone who could access them. She grabbed her phone and called Marcus Lang. He picked up on the second ring. "Twice in 2 days, I'm flattered. I need a favor." "Course you do. What?" "Can you pull 911 call logs for a specific address?" "Probably. Why?" "Because I want to know who made the call." Silence on the other end. Then, "Claire, let it go." "I can't." "Yes, you can. You just don't want to." "Marcus, listen to me. You win this by walking away." They suspended the cop. The department's scrambling to cover their ass. The story's already out there. You push harder, you turn into the person who can't let things go, and that's when public opinion shifts. Claire's grip tightened on the phone. Someone looked at me and decided I didn't belong in my own house. I want to know who. And then what? You confront them? Yell at them? Make them apologize? It won't change anything. Maybe not. But I'll know. Marcus sighed. "Give me the address." She rattled it off. He was quiet for a moment, probably writing it down. "I'll see what I can do," he said. "But Claire, seriously, think about whether this is worth it." "It is." "All right, I'll call you back." He hung up. Claire set the phone down and stared at the wall. Outside, a car drove past, headlights sweeping across the window. The house settled into stillness. An hour later, Marcus called back. "You're not going to like this," he said. "Tell me anyway." The call came from 856 Maple Crest, registered to Gregory Haynes, 54 years old, retired insurance adjuster. No priors, no history of complaints beyond the noise thing you probably already found. Claire closed her eyes. "What did he say in the call?" You really want to know? Yes. Marcus exhaled slowly. He said there was a suspicious individual attempting to enter a residence at 847 Maple Crest. Said the person didn't match the neighborhood profile and appeared to be casing the property. Dispatch asked if he saw any weapons or signs of forced entry. He said no, but he wanted officers to check it out before something happened. Before something happened, Claire repeated. Yeah. She didn't say anything for a long time. Marcus waited. You still there? He finally asked. Yeah. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. Claire, thanks for the help. She hung up before he could argue. The house was too quiet again. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the street. 3 doors down, a light was on in the front room of 856 Maple Crest. She could see the flicker of a television through the curtains. Gregory Haynes, retired insurance adjuster, probably sitting in his recliner right now watching the news, completely unaware that the woman he'd reported was standing in her own house, staring at his. Claire turned away from the window and sat back down at the table. She pulled the letter from Jonathan Voss closer and read it again. Slowly this time, weighing every word. By midnight, she'd made her decision. The next morning, she called the number on the letterhead. A receptionist answered, professional and polite. Keller, Voss, and Associates. How may I direct your call? Jonathan Voss, please tell him it's Claire Whitmore. One moment. Hold the music, soft jazz that felt out of place. Then a click. Ms. Whitmore. Voss's voice was smooth, confident. Thank you for calling. I'm ready to move forward, Claire said, but I have conditions. I'm listening. I don't want a media circus. I don't want to be the face of some campaign. I just want accountability. Understood. What does accountability look like to you? Claire thought about Cole, suspended and waiting. She thought about Park's promises of reform. She thought about Gregory Haynes sitting in his house watching TV. I want a settlement. I want policy changes. And I want the caller's name made public. Voss was quiet for a beat. The last one might be difficult. Then make it happen anyway. Ms. Whitmore, exposing a private citizen who made a 911 call, even an unjustified one, opens up legal complications. He wasn't private when he decided I was a threat. He made it public the second he dialed. Voss paused. Let me see what I can do. Can you come to my office tomorrow to go over the details? Yes. Good. I'll have my assistant send you the address. Claire hung up and sat in the silence of her kitchen, staring at nothing in particular. Outside, the world kept turning. Inside, something had shifted. She could feel it, the way you feel a bone settle back into place after a fracture. Painful, necessary, final. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You're making a mistake. Claire stared at it. No name, no context, just those 4 words. She typed back, "Who is this?" No response. She waited 5 minutes, then 10, nothing. She set the phone down and walked to the window, pulling the curtain aside. The street looked normal, cars and driveways, porch lights glowing, no one standing outside watching. But someone had her number. Someone knew she'd contacted a lawyer. Someone was paying attention. And for the first time since this whole thing started, Claire felt the cold edge of something that wasn't anger or exhaustion. It was fear. She didn't sleep that night. Instead, Claire sat at the kitchen table with her laptop open, running searches on burner phone apps, anonymous messaging services, anything that might explain how someone got her number and why they cared enough to warn her off. The coffee pot ran dry twice. By 4 in the morning, her eyes burned and her head felt stuffed with cotton, but she kept going because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant acknowledging that someone out there wanted her quiet. At 6, she gave up and showered. The hot water helped, but not enough. She dressed in clean scrubs. Her shift didn't start until noon, but staying home felt like waiting for something bad to happen. She grabbed her keys and headed out. The drive to Jonathan Voss's office took 40 minutes through morning traffic. The building was downtown, glass and steel, the kind of place where the lobby had marble floors and the elevators required a key card. Claire gave her name to the receptionist, a woman in her 30s with perfect posture and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mr. Voss is expecting you, 18th floor." The elevator rose smoothly, no jerks or rattles. When the doors opened, Claire stepped into a hallway lined with framed diplomas and photographs of Voss shaking hands with people who looked important. A younger woman in a charcoal suit met her at the entrance to the firm's suite. "Miss Whitmore? I'm Angela Park, Mr. Voss's associate. Follow me." They walked past offices with closed doors, conference rooms with long tables, paralegals buried in stacks of paper. Everything smelled like expensive coffee and air conditioning. Angela stopped at a corner office and knocked twice before opening the door. Jonathan Voss stood behind a massive desk, talking on a cell phone. He was mid-50s, silver hair combed back, wearing a navy suit that probably cost more than Claire's monthly mortgage. He gestured for her to sit, wrapped up the call, and extended a hand. "Ms. Whitmore, thank you for coming." Claire shook his hand, firm grip, practiced smile. "Let's get to it." Voss sat down and slid a folder across the desk. "I've reviewed the body cam footage, the dispatch records, and the preliminary internal affairs report. You have a very strong case. Officer Cole violated multiple protocols. The department failed to properly vet the 911 call. And the escalation was textbook excessive force." "What's the timeline?" "We file a civil suit within the next 2 weeks. Discovery takes 3 to 6 months. Settlement negotiations usually begin after that, assuming the city wants to avoid a trial. And if they don't settle? Then we go to court. But they will. This is bad press, and bad press costs money." Claire leaned back in the chair. "What about the caller?" Voss's expression shifted slightly. "That's more complicated. Gregory Haynes is a private citizen who made a 911 call. Legally, he's protected under good faith reporting statutes. He lied. He exaggerated. That's different. He didn't claim you were armed or violent. He said you looked suspicious. That's subjective. So he gets away with it." Voss folded his hands on the desk. "Not necessarily. We can request that his identity be disclosed as part of the public record during discovery. That makes it a matter of court documentation, which means it's accessible. Once it's out there, the media will do the rest." Claire thought about that. The media. The interviews. The inevitable flood of attention on a man who'd probably never considered that picking up the phone might have consequences. "Do it," she said. "Understood." Voss made a note on a legal pad. "Now, there's something else we need to discuss. Last night you received a text message from an unknown number. Do you still have it?" Claire pulled out her phone and showed him the screenshot she'd taken. Voss studied it, his jaw tightening. "This is intimidation," he said, "and it's illegal. I'm going to file a motion to subpoena the phone records associated with this number. If it's linked to anyone in the department, that's witness tampering. You think it's a cop? I think it's someone who doesn't want this case moving forward. Whether that's law enforcement, a friend of Cole's, or someone else entirely, we'll find out." Angela spoke up from her spot near the door. "We'll also recommend you vary your daily routine. Different routes to work, different times. Don't post on social media. If you notice anyone following you, call us immediately." Claire felt the weight of it settle over her like a second skin. She'd been in danger before. Real danger. The kind that came with gunfire and shrapnel. But this was different. This was slow and insidious. Threats wrapped in anonymity. Pressure applied from angles she couldn't see. "How long until we file?" she asked. 1 week, Voss said. "I'll have the paperwork ready by Friday. You'll need to come in to sign, and then we go public." Claire nodded and stood. "Anything else?" "Just one thing." Voss's voice softened slightly. "This is going to get ugly. People will pick sides. Your life will be scrutinized. Are you ready for that?" Claire met his eyes. "I've been ready since the moment Cole told me I didn't belong in my own driveway." She left the office and took the elevator back down. Outside, the city was loud and indifferent. People rushing past with coffee cups and briefcases. No idea that the woman standing on the corner was about to blow a hole in their police department's credibility. Her phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Patel. "Need you to come in early. Multi-vehicle accident on Route 9. All hands." Claire typed back. "On my way." She drove straight to the hospital, adrenaline kicking in the way it always did when the work demanded it. The ER was chaos when she arrived. Gurneys lined up in the hallway, paramedics shouting handoff reports, nurses moving in controlled bursts between bays. Claire clocked in, grabbed a trauma gown, and dove in. The first patient was a middle-aged man with a steering wheel imprint across his chest. possible cardiac contusion. Claire got him on a monitor, started an IV, ran a 12-lead EKG, while a resident barked orders. The man was conscious but dazed, asking about his wife. "She's being treated," Claire said. "Focus on breathing for me." Next bay. A teenager with a compound fracture of the tibia, bones sticking out at an angle that made Claire's own leg ache in sympathy. Ortho was 20 minutes out. Claire stabilized the limb, pushed pain meds, kept the kid talking to distract him from the fact that his leg looked like something out of a horror movie. Third bay. An older woman, unconscious, head lac bleeding freely. Claire checked pupil response, applied pressure to the wound, called for a CT scan. The woman's daughter stood in the corner, hyperventilating. Claire spared her a glance. "She's stable. We're getting imaging now. Is she going to be okay?" "I don't know yet, but we're doing everything we can." It was the only honest answer, and the daughter seemed to understand that. She nodded and stepped back, letting the team work. 4 hours later, the rush slowed. Patient stabilized, imaging completed, surgeries scheduled. Claire peeled off her gloves and washed her hands, staring at the sink as water ran over her skin. Her back ached, her feet throbbed, but her mind was clear in a way it hadn't been since the text message. Dr. Patel found her in the break room, pouring coffee that tasted like burnt plastic. "You okay?" Patel asked. "Yeah." "You sure? Because you've been running on fumes for 2 days. Claire took a sip of the coffee and grimaced. "I'm fine." Patel sat down across from her. "I heard you're moving forward with the lawsuit." Claire didn't ask how she knew. Hospital gossip moved faster than IV drips. "Yeah." "Good. You should." Patel paused. "But be careful. People don't like it when you make them look bad." "I'm not making anyone look bad. They did that themselves." "True, but they won't see it that way." Claire set the coffee down. "You think I should drop it?" "No. I think you should be ready for what comes next." Before Claire could respond, her phone buzzed again. Another text. "Unknown number. Last chance. Walk away." Claire's hand tightened around the phone. Patel noticed. "What is it?" Claire showed her the screen. Patel's expression darkened. "You need to report this." "I already told my lawyer." "I mean to the police." Claire almost laughed. "The police, right, because they've been so helpful." "Claire, I'm handling it." She stood and walked out before Patel could argue. Her shift wasn't over, but she needed air. She took the stairs to the roof access, technically off limits, but the lock had been broken for months and no one cared enough to fix it. The door creaked open, and she stepped out into the late afternoon light. The city sprawled below, a patchwork of buildings and streets and lives intersecting in ways no one could track. Claire pulled out her phone and stared at the message. Last chance. Like this was some kind of negotiation. Like she was supposed to weigh her safety against her principles and choose the easy path. She typed back, "No." The reply came within seconds. "You were warned." Claire's pulse kicked up. She scanned the rooftop, the neighboring buildings, the parking lot below. Nothing. No one watching. But the message sat there, cold and final. She called Voss. He picked up on the first ring. "They just threatened me again," she said. "Forward me the screenshots. I'm filing an emergency motion for a protective order." "What does that do?" "It puts the court on notice that you're being harassed. If anything happens to you, there's a paper trail. And if something happens before the order goes through?" Voss hesitated. "Then you call 911. Claire hung up. The irony wasn't lost on her. Call 911. The same system that had sent coal to her driveway, the same dispatch that hadn't bothered to verify a single detail before rolling units. She was supposed to trust that now. She went back downstairs and finished her shift. By the time she clocked out, the sun had set and the parking lot was half empty. Claire walked to her car, keys already in hand, scanning the shadows between vehicles. Everything looked normal, too normal. She unlocked the door and slid inside, locking it immediately. The engine turned over smooth. No one appeared. No cars followed her out of the lot. But halfway home, she noticed the headlights. 2 cars back, staying consistent through turns, matching her speed. Claire tested it, slowed down, sped up, changed lanes. The car mimicked her movements. She pulled out her phone and called Marcus. "Someone's following me." "Where are you?" "Northbound on Crescent, just past the mall." Can you get to a public place? Yeah, there's a gas station ahead. Do it. I'll stay on the line. Claire pulled into the gas station and parked under the brightest lights she could find. The car that had been following drove past without slowing. Dark sedan, tinted windows, no plates visible in the glare. They drove past, she said. Get the make and model? Ford Taurus, maybe 5 years old, black or dark blue. You sure they were following? I'm sure. Marcus was quiet for a beat. Get home. Lock your doors. I'm making some calls. What kind of calls? The kind that makes sure you're not dealing with this alone. He hung up. Claire sat in the gas station parking lot for 10 minutes, watching traffic, looking for the Taurus. It didn't come back. Eventually, she drove home, taking side streets, doubling back twice to check for tails. Nothing. When she pulled into her driveway, every light in her house was on. She killed the engine and stared. She'd left in the morning. She always turned off the lights. Always. Claire grabbed her phone and dialed 911. Her hand shook as she pressed the numbers. 911. What's your emergency? Someone's in my house. What's your location? Claire rattled off the address. The dispatcher's voice stayed calm, professional. Are you inside the residence? No, I'm in my car in the driveway. Stay there. Units are en route. Do you see anyone inside? No, but all the lights are on. I didn't leave them on. Understood. Officers are 2 minutes out. Claire kept the phone to her ear, watching the house. Shadows moved behind the curtains, or maybe it was just the angle of the streetlights. She couldn't tell. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. 2 patrol cars turned onto Maple Crest, lights flashing. They stopped in front of her house and 4 officers got out. Claire recognized one of them, Brennan, Cole's former partner. He saw her and his expression went carefully blank. A different officer approached her car, older, with sergeant stripes. Ms. Whitmore, I'm Sergeant Delgado. You reported a possible intruder. Yes, all the lights are on. I didn't leave them that way. Delgado nodded. Stay here. We'll clear the house. The officers moved toward the front door, hands on their weapons. Delgado tried the handle. Locked. He radioed something Claire couldn't hear, and Brennan moved around to the back. A minute later, the front door swung open from the inside. They went in, methodical and controlled. Claire watched from the car, heart hammering. Lights flicked on in rooms she couldn't see from the driveway. Voices called out, muffled by walls and distance. 5 minutes later, Delgado emerged and waved her over. Claire got out of the car and walked to the front door. Delgado's expression was grim. House is clear, no one inside, but you need to see this. He led her into the living room. The furniture had been moved, not ransacked, but rearranged. The couch was against the wrong wall. The coffee table was upside down. Pictures had been taken off the walls and stacked neatly on the floor. In the kitchen, every cabinet was open. Dishes were still inside, nothing broken, but the doors hung wide like mouths frozen mid-scream. Upstairs, her bedroom looked untouched except for the bed. The mattress had been flipped, sheets stripped and folded in a perfect square on the floor. Claire stood in the doorway trying to process it. This wasn't theft. This wasn't vandalism. This was a message. Anything missing? Delgado asked. Claire walked through the rooms, checking. Her laptop was still on the kitchen table. Her TV was still mounted on the wall. Jewelry box untouched. Nothing gone. No, she said. Nothing's missing. Delgado exchanged a look with Brennan. We'll dust for prints, file a report. But Ms. Whitmore, this feels personal. You think? Do you have any idea who might do this? Claire thought about the text messages, the car that had followed her, the warning to walk away. Yeah, she said. I have an idea. Delgado pulled out a notepad. I'm going to need details. Claire told him everything, the lawsuit, the texts, the tale on Crescent Boulevard. Delgado wrote it all down, his pen moving fast. We'll pass this to detectives, he said, and I'm going to recommend a patrol increase on this street. In the meantime, is there somewhere else you can stay tonight? Claire shook her head. This is my house. I'm not leaving. Ms. Whitmore, I'm not leaving. Delgado sighed. All right, but keep your doors locked, windows secured, and if anything else happens, call immediately. The officers finished processing the scene and left. Claire stood in her living room, surrounded by furniture that didn't belong where it was, and felt the weight of it settle into her bones. Someone had been here, in her space, touching her things, sending a message she couldn't ignore. She pulled out her phone and called Voss. It went to voicemail. She left a message, voice steadier than she felt. "They broke into my house. Nothing stolen, just moved things around. Police are filing a report. Call me back." She hung up and started putting the furniture back. The couch was heavy, and she had to drag it inch by inch across the floor. Her back screamed in protest, but she kept going. The coffee table was easier. The pictures went back on the walls, frames slightly crooked but close enough. By the time she finished, it was past midnight. Claire locked every door, checked every window, then sat on the couch with a kitchen knife on the cushion next to her. She didn't sleep. She just sat there, listening to the house settle, waiting for a sound that didn't belong. At 3 a.m, her phone rang. "Marcus, you okay?" "No. I heard about the break-in. Delgado called me." "Why would he call you?" "Because I asked him to keep me updated on anything involving you. Claire, this is escalating. You need protection." "I have locks." Locks didn't stop them tonight. Claire closed her eyes. "What do you want me to do, Marcus? Hire security? Move? Give up?" "I want you to be smart. This isn't a war zone. You can't just dig in and wait for them to get tired." "Then what is it?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "It's a fight you might not win." Claire ended the call and set the phone down. Outside, the street was dark and silent. No cars, no movement, just the low hum of distant traffic and the occasional bark of a dog. She thought about Marcus's words. A fight you might not win. Maybe he was right. Maybe this was bigger than one lawsuit, one officer, one moment in a driveway. Maybe the people pushing back had more resources, more patience, more willingness to cross lines she hadn't even considered yet. But walking away now felt like admitting they were right, that she didn't belong, that people like her should stay quiet and grateful and out of sight. Claire stood and walked to the window. Across the street, a light flicked on in Gregory Haynes's house. She watched as a silhouette moved past the window, paused, then disappeared into another room. She wondered if he knew, if he'd heard about the lawsuit, the break-in, the escalation, if he cared at all that his phone call had set this whole thing in motion. Her phone buzzed. Another text. "Still think you're safe?" Claire stared at the message. Then she typed back. "Come and find out." The reply came fast. "Already did." And that was when she heard it, the soft creak of a floorboard upstairs, in the hallway outside her bedroom. Claire's hand closed around the knife handle. She didn't move from the window, didn't turn, didn't breathe louder than the blood pounding in her ears. The creak came again, deliberate, slow, like someone testing their weight on old wood. She turned and moved toward the stairs, not rushing, not hesitating, just moving with the kind of focus that came from muscle memory older than fear. At the base of the staircase, she stopped and listened. Silence pressed down from above, thick and waiting. Then a voice cut through it. "Police, show me your hands." Claire's grip on the knife loosened. Footsteps thundered down the stairs and Brennan appeared, weapon drawn, eyes wide. Behind him, Delgado emerged from her bedroom, radio in hand. "Clear," Delgado said into the radio. Then to Claire, "We stayed. After you locked up. Perimeter watch." Claire's knees went weak. She leaned against the wall. "You were here the whole time?" "Parked down the street. When we saw movement in the upstairs window, we came in through the back. Your kitchen door lock's a joke, by the way." Brennan holstered his weapon. "Someone was up there. Went out the second-floor bathroom window onto the garage roof, gone by the time we got up." Claire pushed off the wall. "Which way?" "Backyard. Probably hopped fences toward the next street over." Delgado's jaw was tight. "We called it in. Units are canvassing now." Claire walked upstairs. The bathroom window was open, screen removed and leaning against the tub. Cold air poured through the gap. She looked out at the garage roof, then the yard beyond, dark and empty. Delgado appeared behind her. "You can't stay here tonight." "I'm not leaving." "Miss Whitmore, someone just broke into your house while you were inside. That's not harassment anymore. That's attempted assault." Claire turned to face him. "Then catch them. We're trying, but you're making it hard by refusing to protect yourself." "I am protecting myself." She held up the knife. Delgado sighed. That's not what I mean. Brennan was downstairs talking on his radio. Claire caught fragments, suspect description, possible vehicle, canvas radius. She walked past Delgado and went back to the living room. Her phone was on the couch where she'd left it. The last text was still on the screen. Already did. She forwarded it to Voss, then to Marcus, then to Delgado's official department email. Documentation. Paper trail. Evidence that when this went to court, there'd be no ambiguity about what had happened. Delgado came downstairs. We're posting a unit outside tonight. No arguments. Fine. And tomorrow, you're getting an alarm system installed. Department will cover it. Claire looked at him. Why are you helping me? Delgado met her eyes. Because I've been on the job 23 years, and I've seen what happens when good people get pushed out of their own neighborhoods. I'm tired of watching it happen. He left. Brennan followed without a word. Through the window, Claire watched them return to their patrol car, parked 2 houses down under a broken streetlight. The engine stayed off. Brake lights glowed red in the dark. Claire locked the bathroom window, checked every other window in the house, then went back downstairs. She didn't try to sleep. Instead, she sat at the kitchen table and opened her laptop. If someone wanted to scare her into silence, they'd just given her more ammunition. She pulled up the lawsuit draft Voss had sent earlier that week, scanned through the claims. Excessive force, unlawful detention, violation of civil rights. The language was clinical, detached, like reading about someone else's life. But now there was more. Breaking and entering, stalking, witness intimidation. She started drafting an addendum, typing fast, listing every incident with timestamps and screenshots. The text messages, the car that followed her, the rearranged furniture, the intruder tonight. By dawn, she had 12 pages. She saved it, encrypted the file, and emailed it to Voss with the subject line, Update, urgent. Her phone rang at 7. Voss, I got your email, he said. We're accelerating the timeline. I'm filing the amended complaint this morning. What does that change? Everything. The intimidation adds criminal elements. That brings federal attention. FBI might get involved. Claire felt something shift in her chest. Good. Ms. Whitmore, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Do you have any enemies? Anyone from your past who might want to hurt you? No. You're sure? No disgruntled patients, no issues during your service. I said no. Voss was quiet for a beat. All right, I'm sending a private security detail to your house. They'll be there in an hour. I don't need... This isn't optional. If something happens to you, this case dies. I can't let that happen. Claire wanted to argue, but exhaustion was catching up. Fine. She hung up and made coffee. The patrol car was still outside. Delgado and Brennan had been replaced by 2 officers she didn't recognize, younger, more alert. One of them got out and walked the perimeter of the house. The other stayed in the car, watching the street. At 8:30, a black SUV pulled up. 2 men in suits got out, ex-military by the way they moved, controlled, economical, scanning angles before committing to steps. One knocked on the door. Claire opened it. Ms. Whitmore, I'm Harris. This is Lopez. We're with Sentinel Group. Mr. Voss hired us to provide security. Harris was mid-40s, buzz cut going gray, the kind of face that had seen things and stopped reacting. Lopez was younger, maybe 30, with sharp eyes and a build that suggested he spent more time in a gym than anywhere else. I don't need babysitters, Claire said. Harris didn't smile. We're not babysitters. We're insurance. You go about your day, we stay out of sight. Someone tries something, we handle it. And if I tell you to leave, then we park down the street and follow you anyway. Voss pays us whether you cooperate or not. Claire stepped aside. Fine. Coffee's in the kitchen. They came in and did a walkthrough, checked windows, exits, sight lines. Lopez went upstairs. Harris stayed in the living room, standing near the window with his hands clasped in front of him like a statue. You always this tense? Claire asked. Only when the client's been threatened multiple times in 48 hours. Fair point. Claire's phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Patel. Taking you off the schedule for the rest of the week. Non-negotiable. Claire called her. Patel picked up immediately. Before you argue, Patel said, the hospital's liability insurance flagged your situation. They don't want you on the floor until this is resolved. That's not fair. No, it's not. But it's reality. You're a target right now, and the hospital can't risk something happening on their property. Claire closed her eyes. So I'm suspended. You're on administrative leave with pay. There's a difference. Doesn't feel like it. I know. But Claire, use this time. Work with your lawyer. Get your security sorted. Let the police do their job. Claire ended the call and set the phone down harder than necessary. Harris glanced at her but didn't comment. Lopez came back downstairs. Bathroom windows secure. I reinforced the lock. Back door needs a deadbolt. I can install one today. Do it, Claire said. Lopez nodded and left through the back. Claire heard him moving around in the yard, testing the fence, checking angles. Professional, thorough. The kind of people who got paid to think 3 steps ahead. At 10, Jonathan Voss called again. The complaint's filed. It's public record now. Press is going to pick it up within the hour. What do I need to do? Nothing. Stay home. Don't talk to reporters. If anyone shows up, refer them to me. And the intruder? Police are running prints from the bathroom window. If they get a match, we'll know who we're dealing with. Claire hung up and turned on the TV. Local news. A reporter stood in front of the Silver Ridge Police Department, talking about budget cuts and staffing shortages. Nothing about her case yet. She changed the channel. More news. Weather. Traffic. Then, breaking news out of Silver Ridge. A civil rights lawsuit has been filed against the Silver Ridge Police Department and Officer Jason Cole, alleging unlawful detention, excessive force, and witness intimidation. The plaintiff, Claire Whitmore, is a local nurse and decorated military veteran who was confronted in her own driveway last week. The lawsuit also names an anonymous 911 caller whose identity is expected to be disclosed during discovery. We'll have more on this story as it develops. Claire's face appeared on screen, a photo pulled from the hospital's website, professional and smiling. Then footage of her driveway, the black SUVs, the tactical team. The reporter's voice continued, detailing the allegations, the body cam footage, the break-in. Harris was watching from the doorway. You okay? Yeah. You don't look okay. Claire turned off the TV. I'm fine. Her phone started ringing. Unknown numbers, one after another. She let them go to voicemail. Reporters, probably. Maybe supporters. Maybe people who thought she was making it all up. At noon, Marcus called. Just saw the news. Yeah. You need anything? I need this to be over. Marcus exhaled slowly. It's going to get worse before it gets better. I know. No, I don't think you do. Once the caller's name goes public, people are going to pick sides. Some will support you. Some will say you're destroying a man's life over a phone call. It's going to get loud. Let it get loud. Claire, I'm done being quiet, Marcus. I'm done pretending that what happened was okay. Someone called the cops on me because I didn't look like I belonged. That's not a misunderstanding. That's racism. And I'm not going to let it slide because it makes people uncomfortable. Silence on the other end. Then, all right, just be careful. She hung up. Lopez came back inside, hands covered in dirt. Deadbolt's in. Back fence has a weak spot. I reinforced it. Thanks. He washed his hands in the kitchen sink and poured himself coffee. Harris joined him. They stood there, quiet and watchful, like sentries guarding a perimeter Claire couldn't see. At 2, Voss called again. We have a name. Claire's pulse spiked. Who? The intruder. Police got a partial print off the window frame, ran it through AFIS. Match came back to a guy named Derek Moss, 32, former security guard, currently unemployed. No priors, but his name popped up in connection with a private investigation firm that does work for law enforcement unions. Claire processed that. So someone hired him. That's the assumption. Detectives are bringing him in now. What happens next? They question him. If he talks, we find out who paid him. If he doesn't, we keep digging. And Cole? Internal Affairs finished their review. He's being terminated. Official announcement comes tomorrow. Claire leaned against the counter. Good. There's more. The 911 caller's name is going public in the next court filing. Gregory Haynes. Local media is already digging into his background. What are they finding? 3 noise complaints in 2 years, all targeting neighbors who weren't white. A Facebook page full of posts about preserving neighborhood character. He's not going to come out of this well. Claire felt a grim satisfaction settle in her chest. Not quite justice yet, but close enough to taste it. At 4, the news broke. Gregory Haynes' name appeared on every local channel, accompanied by his photo. A balding man in his 50s with a tight smile and glasses. Reporters camped outside his house. Neighbors were interviewed. One woman, elderly and shaking, said Haynes had called the cops on her grandson last year for skateboarding in the street. By 5, Haynes's Facebook page was deleted. His phone number disconnected. But the damage was done. The internet had his name, his face, his history. There was no walking it back. Claire watched it unfold on her laptop, scrolling through comment sections and news articles. Some people defended Haynes, said he was just being cautious, that anyone would have done the same. But most were furious. People shared their own stories of being profiled, harassed, questioned in their own neighborhoods. The outrage built like a wave, fast and inevitable. At 6, Voss called. "Moss is talking." Claire straightened. "What's he saying?" "He was hired by a third party to scare you. Move furniture around, send texts, make you think you were being watched. He didn't know who hired him. Everything was done through an encrypted app. But the police traced the payment. It came from an account linked to the Silver Ridge Police Union." Claire's breath caught. "The union?" "Yeah, which means this isn't just one rogue cop. This is institutional." "What does that mean for the case?" It means we just expanded our targets. The union's going to deny involvement, but the money trail doesn't lie. We're adding them to the lawsuit." Claire ended the call and sat in silence. Harris and Lopez were in the living room talking quietly. Outside, the patrol car was still there, engine idling. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You win. I'm done." Claire stared at it. Then another message came through. "This is Haynes. I'm sorry. I didn't think it would go this far." She didn't respond. There was nothing to say. Sorry didn't undo the cops in her driveway. Sorry didn't erase the fear or the break-in or the night she'd spent wondering if she was safe in her own home. She deleted the message and blocked the number. That night, Claire slept for the first time in days. Harris and Lopez took shifts, one awake while the other rested. The patrol car stayed outside. The house was quiet. When she woke the next morning, the sun was streaming through the windows and her phone was full of notifications. News alerts, emails, texts from people she hadn't spoken to in years, all saying the same thing. "I saw what happened. I'm proud of you." She ignored most of it and checked the news. The lead story was Cole's termination. His photo appeared on screen, badge and uniform, official department portrait, alongside a statement from the chief. "Officer Jason Cole has been terminated effective immediately for conduct unbecoming and violation of department policy. We are committed to accountability and transparency." The second story was about the union. A spokesperson stood in front of a bland office building, reading from a prepared statement. "The Silver Ridge Police Union categorically denies any involvement in the harassment of Ms. Whitmore. We are conducting our own internal investigation and will cooperate fully with law enforcement." Claire turned off the TV. She didn't need to hear the denials. The evidence spoke for itself. At 10, Voss called. "Settlement offer just came in." "From who?" "The city. They want to avoid a trial. They're offering $250,000, policy reforms, and a public apology." Claire let that sink in. $250,000. Enough to pay off her mortgage, take time off, rebuild. But it felt hollow. Money didn't change what had happened. "What about the union?" she asked. "They're not included in this offer. If you accept, you'd have to drop the claims against them." "Then I don't accept." Voss was quiet for a beat. "Claire, this is a good offer, more than most plaintiffs get." "I don't care. The union paid someone to break into my house. They don't get to walk away. If we go to trial, it could take years. You'll be under scrutiny the entire time. Every part of your life will be examined." "I know. And you're okay with that?" Claire thought about the night she'd spent awake, the fear that had crawled under her skin, the way she'd been made to feel like a stranger in her own home. She thought about all the people who'd sent messages saying they'd experienced the same thing, who'd been told to stay quiet, to not make waves, to accept less than they deserved. "Yeah," she said, "I'm okay with it." Voss exhaled. "All right, I'll reject the offer." The backlash started within hours. Online forums exploded with opinions. Some called Claire a hero. Others said she was greedy, opportunistic, playing the victim. Conservative news outlets ran segments questioning her motives. Liberal outlets praised her courage. Everyone had an angle. Claire stopped reading the comments after the first day. It didn't matter what strangers thought. What mattered was the case, the evidence, the outcome. 2 weeks passed. Harris and Lopez rotated shifts, becoming fixtures in her house like furniture she'd stopped noticing. The patrol car outside changed officers every 8 hours, but never left. Claire's life became a strange new normal. Security details, legal consultations, avoiding cameras whenever she left the house. Dr. Patel called to check in. Hospital board wants to give you an award, community service, advocacy, something like that. Tell them no. I figured you'd say that. But Claire, people want to support you. They can support me by not making this about them. Patel laughed quietly. Fair enough. At the 3-week mark, Voss called with an update. Moss cut a deal. Full cooperation in exchange for reduced charges. He's giving us everything. Who contacted him, how the payments were structured, what he was told to do. And the trail leads to Richard Landry, president of the Silver Ridge Police Union. He orchestrated the whole thing, hired Moss through an intermediary, set up the burner accounts, coordinated the timing. Claire felt ice settle in her stomach. Why? Because you were making them look bad. The body cam footage went viral. Donations to the union dropped. Members started questioning leadership. Landry wanted you to back off before it got worse. It just got worse. Yeah, FBI's opening a criminal investigation. Landry's looking at conspiracy charges, witness tampering, racketeering if they can tie him to other cases. Claire sat down. This had started with a phone call and a confrontation in a driveway. Now it was reaching into the highest levels of the police union, unraveling connections and corruption she hadn't known existed. What do we do now? She asked. We wait. The criminal case moves on its own timeline. Our civil suit continues. But Claire, you just took down one of the most powerful figures in Silver Ridge law enforcement. That's going to have ripple effects. She hung up and stared at the wall. Harris was reading a book in the armchair. Lopez was outside, walking the perimeter. Everything looked normal, but nothing felt normal anymore. That afternoon, a delivery truck pulled up. The driver knocked on the door with a large box. Harris checked it first, scanned for wires, weight distribution, anything suspicious. Clean. Claire signed for it and brought it inside. Inside the box was a smaller envelope. She opened it carefully, a handwritten letter on expensive paper. Miss Whitmore, my name is Patricia Landry. I'm Richard's wife. I'm writing to tell you that I'm sorry for what my husband did. I didn't know about the harassment until the FBI showed up at our door. I've been married to him for 26 years, and I thought I knew who he was. I was wrong. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just asking you to know that not everyone in his life supported what he did. Some of us are horrified. I hope you find peace. Patricia. Claire read it twice, then set it aside. She didn't know what to do with it. Sympathy for the wife of the man who'd tried to destroy her felt misplaced, but the letter was real, human, unfiltered in a way most of the messages she'd received weren't. She folded it and put it in a drawer. The next day, the news reported Landry's arrest. Footage showed him being led out of his house in handcuffs, suit jacket over his wrists, face pale and drawn. Reporters shouted questions he didn't answer. His lawyer issued a statement denying all charges. Public opinion swung again. The narrative shifted from nurse versus cop to corruption in law enforcement. Editorial boards called for investigations. Politicians promised reforms. The city council held emergency meetings. Claire watched it all from a distance, like observing weather patterns she couldn't control. A week later, Voss called. Second settlement offer. The city's upped it to $400,000. The union's offering another $200,000 separately. Policy overhaul, mandatory bias training, independent review board. They want this done. Claire was quiet. Claire? I'm thinking. About what? Whether $600,000 and some policy changes actually fix anything. Voss sighed. It doesn't, but it's more than most people get, and it sends a message. What message? That if you harass someone long enough, you can buy your way out? That there are consequences. That's more than we had before. Claire stood and walked to the window. Outside, the street was quiet. Mrs. Castellano was pruning her roses. A kid rode past on a bike. Ordinary life, continuing like nothing had happened. "I'll think about it," she said. "Don't think too long. Offers like this don't stay on the table." She hung up. Harris looked up from his book. "Big decision." "Yeah." "What are you going to do?" Claire shrugged. "I don't know yet." But she did know. She'd known since the moment Cole had told her to step away from her own car, since Haynes had made that phone call, since Landry had decided she was a problem that needed solving. She was going to see this through, not for the money, not for the headlines, but because walking away now would mean accepting that what happened was okay. And it wasn't. That night she called Voss back. "Reject both offers. We're going to trial." Voss was silent for a moment. "You're sure?" "I'm sure." "All right. I'll let them know." 3 months later, the trial date was set. June 15th, federal court. Judge Marilyn Shue presiding. The weeks leading up to it were a blur of depositions and prep sessions. Voss walked Claire through every detail. What to expect, how to answer questions, what the defense would try to use against her. They practiced cross-examination until she could recite her story in her sleep. The defense team was a wall of expensive suits and calculated smiles. They filed motion after motion, trying to delay, trying to suppress evidence, trying to paint Claire as someone looking for a payday. Voss shot them down one by one. When the trial finally started, the courtroom was packed. Reporters, activists, curious onlookers. Claire sat at the plaintiff's table in a navy suit, hands folded, watching as the jury filed in. Voss's opening statement was clean and direct. He laid out the facts: the 911 call, the confrontation, the body cam footage, the harassment, the break-in, the money trail. He spoke for 20 minutes and never raised his voice. The defense countered with sympathy. Cole was a dedicated officer. Haynes was a concerned citizen. Landry was being scapegoated for institutional failures. Claire was tragic, yes, but she was also capitalizing on a misunderstanding. The jury's faces gave nothing away. The first witness was Sergeant Park. He testified about department protocols, about how the 911 call should have been handled, about the failures that led to Claire's driveway confrontation. The defense tried to poke holes. Park didn't budge. Next came Captain Reyes. She described Claire's military service, her decorations, her character. The defense objected twice. The judge overruled both times. Derek Moss testified on day 3. He looked smaller in the witness box, shoulders hunched, voice shaky. He described how he'd been contacted, what he'd been paid to do, how he'd thought it was harmless until he saw the news coverage. "Did you know who hired you?" Voss asked. "Not at first, but after the FBI traced the payments, yeah, it was the union." "And what were you told to do?" "Scare her, make her think she wasn't safe, make her drop the lawsuit." The courtroom went silent. On day 5, Claire took the stand. Voss led her through the timeline. The morning she came home from her shift. The moment Cole approached. What he said. What she said. How it felt to be treated like a criminal in her own driveway. "Were you afraid?" Voss asked. "No," Claire said. "I was angry." "Why?" "Because I'd served this country. I'd saved lives. I'd done everything right. And it didn't matter. Someone looked at me and decided I didn't belong." The defense attorney cross-examined for 2 hours. He tried to rattle her, to suggest she'd been combative, that she'd escalated the situation. Claire stayed calm. She answered every question with the same measured tone she used in the ER. By the time she stepped down, the jury looked exhausted. Closing arguments came on day 7. Voss summarized the evidence, connected the dots, reminded the jury that this wasn't about one bad cop. It was about a system that had failed at every level. The defense argued reasonable doubt, argued that mistakes weren't crimes, argued that Claire was asking for too much. The jury deliberated for 11 hours. When they came back, the foreman stood and read the verdict. Liable on all counts, $400,000 from the city, $300,000 from the union. Policy reforms mandatory within 90 days. The courtroom erupted. Claire sat perfectly still, hands in her lap, feeling nothing and everything at once. Outside, reporters swarmed. Voss gave a statement. Claire walked past them all without a word. Harris and Lopez were waiting by the car. "You did good," Harris said. Claire nodded. She didn't trust herself to speak. The drive home was quiet. When they pulled onto Maple Crest Avenue, the street looked the same as always. Houses, lawns, mailboxes. Like nothing had changed, but everything had changed. Claire got out of the car and walked to her front door. Harris and Lopez stayed in the driveway, giving her space. She went inside and stood in the middle of the living room, looking around. Her furniture, her walls, her home. For the first time in months, it felt like hers again. Her phone buzzed. A text from Voss. "Congratulations. You earned this." She set the phone down and walked to the kitchen, made coffee, sat at the table, let the silence settle over her like a blanket. Outside, a car pulled up. Claire looked through the window and saw Marcus getting out. He walked to the door and knocked. She let him in. "Heard the verdict," he said. "Yeah. How do you feel?" Claire thought about it. "Tired." Marcus nodded. "That's fair." They sat in the living room, not saying much, just existing in the same space. After a while, Marcus stood to leave. "You going to be okay?" he asked. "Yeah," Claire said. "I think so." He left. The house went quiet again. Claire walked upstairs and changed out of her suit, put on jeans and an old sweater, came back down and made dinner, pasta, nothing fancy. Ate at the table, watching the sun set through the window. Her phone buzzed again. Another email. She almost ignored it, but the subject line caught her eye. From a fellow veteran. She opened it. "Miss Whitmore, I don't know if you'll read this, but I wanted to thank you. I'm a black man who served in the Marines for 10 years. I've been stopped in my own neighborhood 4 times, twice by the same cop. I never said anything because I didn't think it would matter. Watching your case gave me hope. I'm filing a complaint tomorrow. Thank you for not backing down. Respectfully, James Porter." Claire read it 3 times. Then she closed her laptop and leaned back in the chair. Outside, the streetlights flickered on. The neighborhood settled into evening rhythms. And for the first time since this all started, Claire Whitmore allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, it had been worth it. But as she stood to clear her plate, her phone buzzed one last time. An email. No subject. No sender name. Just an attachment. She hesitated, then opened it. A photograph, taken from across the street, through her living room window, time-stamped 2 hours ago, while she'd been in court. And in the corner of the image, barely visible in the reflection of the glass, was a figure. Watching. Someone who hadn't been caught yet. Someone who was still out there. Claire's hand didn't shake as she forwarded the photo to Voss, then to the FBI field office, then to Delgado. She added a single line. Someone still watching. Then she set the phone down and walked to the window. The street was empty. No cars she didn't recognize. No movement in the shadows. But someone had been there 2 hours ago, close enough to frame her through glass, patient enough to wait until she was occupied elsewhere. Her phone rang. Voss. "I got it. I'm calling the FBI now." "Do that. I'm calling Harris." She hung up and dialed. Harris picked up on the first ring. "We just left. What's wrong?" Claire described the photo. Harris was silent for 3 seconds. Then, "We're turning around. Lock your doors. Don't open them for anyone except us." "I'm not hiding in my own house." "I'm not asking you to hide. I'm asking you to stay alive until we figure out who this is." Claire ended the call and locked the front door. Then the back. She checked every window, pulled the curtains, and stood in the kitchen with her phone in one hand and a chef's knife in the other, feeling ridiculous and vigilant in equal measure. Harris and Lopez arrived in under 10 minutes. They came through the back door. Claire heard the lock disengage, heard Harris's voice low and controlled. "It's us." She let them in. Lopez immediately went upstairs. Harris stayed with Claire, scanning the photo on her phone. "Taken from across the street," he said. "Angle suggests second-floor window, probably Haynes's old place. The new family moved in 3 weeks ago. Then we talked to them." Lopez came back down. "House is clear, but someone's been on the garage roof recently. Fresh scuff marks on the shingles." Claire's stomach tightened. "When?" "Can't tell. Could be from Moss, could be from tonight." Harris was already on his radio, coordinating with local PD. Within 15 minutes, 2 patrol cars arrived. Officers fanned out across the street, knocking on doors, asking questions. Claire watched from the window as lights came on in houses that had been dark. The young couple from Haynes's old place came outside, confused and concerned. The husband held their toddler. The wife wrapped a bathrobe tighter around herself. An officer spoke to them, gesturing toward Claire's house. The wife shook her head. The husband pointed back at their own house, saying something Claire couldn't hear. Delgado pulled up and walked straight to Claire's door. Harris let him in. "The neighbors say they haven't seen anyone suspicious," Delgado said. "But their second-floor guest room window faces your house. It's been unlocked since they moved in. They didn't think to check it." "So someone got in," Claire said. "Looks that way. We're dusting for prints now." Claire sat down at the kitchen table. The exhaustion was catching up again, that bone-deep fatigue that came from months of watching her back, months of wondering when the next threat would materialize. "How long does this go on?" she asked. Delgado pulled out a chair and sat across from her. "Until we catch whoever's doing this. And if you don't?" "We will." Claire met his eyes. "You can't promise that." "No," Delgado admitted. "But I can promise we won't stop trying." An hour later, the FBI arrived. 2 agents in dark suits, badges clipped to their belts, expressions that gave nothing away. The lead agent was a woman in her 40s named Sarah Kwan, sharp-eyed and efficient. Her partner was younger, a man named Russo, who spent more time listening than talking. Kwan sat down with Claire and went through everything. The photo, the timeline, the previous incidents. She took notes on a tablet, asked clarifying questions, never rushed. "The metadata on the photo shows it was taken with a burner phone," Kwan said. "Purchased 2 months ago at a convenience store in Millbrook. Security footage from the store is long gone. But the phone pinged a cell tower 3 blocks from here around the time the photo was taken." "Can you trace it?" Claire asked. "We're trying. But whoever's using it knows what they're doing. They're careful," Russo spoke up. "The pattern suggests someone with a personal vendetta, not random, not opportunistic. This person is invested." Claire thought about that. Cole was in custody. Landry was awaiting trial. Haynes had moved away. Moss had cooperated. Who was left? "Could it be someone connected to one of them?" she asked. "Possible," Kwan said. "We're pulling phone records, financial transactions, known associates. If there's a connection, we'll find it." They left an hour before midnight. Harris and Lopez set up a rotation, one inside, one outside, both armed. Claire went upstairs and lay down on her bed without undressing. Sleep felt impossible, but exhaustion dragged her under anyway. She woke to sunlight and the smell of coffee. Downstairs, Lopez was at the kitchen counter, pouring from a fresh pot. Harris sat at the table, scrolling through something on his phone. "Anything?" Claire asked. Harris looked up. "FBI's got a lead. Someone used a credit card linked to Cole's wife to rent a car 2 days ago. Same car was spotted on this street yesterday afternoon." Claire's chest tightened. "Cole's wife?" "Melanie Cole. 38, high school teacher, no criminal record, but she filed for divorce 3 weeks ago. Maybe she blames you for that." Claire poured herself coffee and sat down. "Why would she? Her husband's the one who screwed up." "People don't always think straight when their lives fall apart," Lopez said. "She lost her marriage, her reputation, probably her job. She's looking for someone to blame, and you're the most visible target." Harris's phone buzzed. He answered, listened, then stood. "FBI's picking her up now. They want you to come to the field office for a positive ID on the photo angle. See if you recognize her from the neighborhood." Claire nodded. "Let's go." The FBI field office was downtown, a concrete building with tight security and fluorescent lights that made everything look washed out. Kwan met them in the lobby and led Claire to a conference room. Inside, a laptop was open, displaying surveillance footage from the street. "This is from yesterday, around the time the photo was taken," Kwan said. She hit play. The footage showed a dark sedan pulling onto Maple Crest Avenue, slowing near Claire's house, then parking 3 doors down. A woman got out, slim, dark hair pulled back, wearing jeans and a hoodie. She walked toward the house that used to belong to Haynes, looked around once, then disappeared from view. Kwan froze the frame. "Recognize her?" Claire leaned closer. The angle was bad, the resolution grainy, but something about the posture felt familiar. "I'm not sure." Kwan pulled up another image, a DMV photo. Melanie Cole. Round face, tired eyes, a smile that looked forced. Claire compared the two. "Could be her, but I can't say for certain." That's fine. We have enough to bring her in for questioning. 2 hours later, Quan called Claire back to the field office. Melanie Cole sat in an interrogation room, visible through one-way glass. She looked smaller in person, shoulders hunched, hands folded on the table in front of her. Quan stood next to Claire. She's not talking yet, but we found the burner phone in her car. Same one used to take the photo. What's her story? She says she was just driving around, needed to clear her head, denies taking any photos. Claire watched Melanie through the glass. The woman looked exhausted, broken. But there was something else there too, a tightness around her mouth, a tension in her jaw that suggested she was holding something back. Quan went into the interrogation room. Claire watched through the glass as Quan sat down across from Melanie. Mrs. Cole, we found the phone. We have metadata showing it was used to photograph Ms. Whitmore's house. We have your car on surveillance footage. I need you to start being honest with me. Melanie's eyes filled with tears. I just wanted her to know. Know what? That she destroyed my life. Melanie's voice cracked. My husband lost his job. We lost our house. I lost my job because parents complained about having someone married to a racist teaching their kids. I lost everything. And she's on the news getting awards and settlements and everyone treating her like a hero. So you decided to scare her. I just wanted her to feel what I felt, that's all. Quan leaned forward. Did you hire Derek Moss? No, I didn't even know who that was until I saw it on the news. Did you break into her house? No. Did you send threatening texts? No, I just took the photo. I wanted her to know someone was still watching. That's it. Quan sat back. You understand that what you did is illegal. Melanie nodded, tears streaming down her face. I know, I don't know what I was thinking. Claire turned away from the glass. She'd expected to feel anger, vindication, something sharp and satisfying. Instead, she just felt tired. Melanie Cole was a casualty of her husband's choices, lashing out because she didn't know what else to do. It didn't excuse what she'd done, but it made her human. Quan came out of the interrogation room. She's being charged with stalking and criminal harassment. Bail hearings tomorrow. What happens to her? Depends on the judge, probably probation, mandatory counseling, restraining order. She's not a violent threat, just someone who made a bad decision. Claire nodded. Can I go home now? Yeah, we'll keep a patrol on your street for the next week, just to be safe. But I think this is over. Harris drove Claire home. The street was quiet when they arrived. No reporters, no cameras, just the ordinary rhythm of a weekday afternoon. Mrs. Castellano was watering her garden. Mr. Eng was checking his mail. Normal life, continuing like it always did. Claire got out of the car and stood in her driveway, the same driveway where this had all started, the same spot where Cole had told her she didn't belong. You good? Harris asked. Yeah, I'm good. Lopez and I are pulling off the detail tomorrow. You need anything before then? Claire shook her head. I think I'm okay now. Harris nodded. You know how to reach us if that changes. He left. Claire went inside and stood in the middle of her living room looking around. Her house, her space, finally hers again. She made lunch, soup from a can, toast with butter, and ate at the table, staring out the window at the street. Across the way, the young couple who'd moved into Haynes's place were loading their toddler into a car seat, heading out for errands or appointments or whatever normal families did on a Thursday afternoon. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Heard they got her. You okay? Claire typed back, Yeah, finally. Good. You earned this. She set the phone down and finished her lunch. Then she opened her laptop and started scrolling through emails. Most were congratulations, expressions of support, offers for interviews she'd never accept. But one stood out. It was from a woman named Dr. Evelyn Torres, director of a veterans advocacy organization based in the state capital. Ms. Whitmore, I've been following your case closely. What you've accomplished, not just the legal victory, but the way you've handled yourself throughout this ordeal, has inspired a lot of people. I'd like to talk to you about joining our advisory board. We work with veterans transitioning to civilian life, particularly those facing discrimination or systemic barriers. I think your perspective would be invaluable. No pressure, just an invitation to talk. Best, Dr. Evelyn Torres. Claire read it twice. Then she hit reply. Dr. Torres, I'm interested. Let's talk. Claire Whitmore. She sent it and closed the laptop. Outside, the sun was starting to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the lawn. Claire stood and walked to the window, watching the light change, feeling something shift inside her. For months, she'd been fighting just to hold on to what was hers, her house, her peace, her dignity. Now, for the first time, she was thinking about what came next. Not just survival, but purpose. Her phone rang. Voss. Just heard about Melanie Cole. You okay? I'm fine. Good. Because I have news. The city's implementing the policy changes. Mandatory bias training for all officers, independent review board for complaints, body cam footage automatically flagged for supervisory review on any use of force incident. It's all going into effect next month. Claire sat down. That's good. It's more than good. It's precedent. Other cities are watching. This could ripple out. Let's hope it does. Voss was quiet for a moment. You did something important here, Claire. I know it doesn't feel like enough. It never does. But it matters. Thanks. She hung up and sat in the silence of her kitchen. The house settled around her, familiar creaks and whispers she'd learned to recognize. Home. That night, Claire slept soundly for the first time in months. No nightmares, no jolting awake at phantom sounds. Just deep, dreamless rest. When she woke the next morning, the world felt lighter. Not perfect, not fixed, but better. She made coffee and sat on the front porch watching the neighborhood come to life. Kids walking to the bus stop, adults heading to work, Mrs. Castellano waving from 2 doors down. Dr. Patel called at 9. Hospital board met last night. They want you back. No restrictions. Full reinstatement. When? Whenever you're ready. Claire thought about it. The ER. The organized chaos. The immediacy of problems she could actually solve. Monday, she said. You sure? You can take more time if you need it. I'm sure. The weekend passed quietly. Claire cleaned the house, ran errands, did laundry. Ordinary tasks that felt luxurious in their normalcy. On Saturday afternoon, she drove to the hardware store and bought new locks for every door and window, installed them herself, taking her time, making sure each one was secure. On Sunday, she went for a run. The first real exercise she'd managed in weeks. Her lungs burned and her legs ached, but it felt good to push her body, to remember what strength felt like when it wasn't just about endurance. Monday morning, Claire walked into Silver Ridge General at 6:30. Scrubs pressed, badge clipped to her pocket. The ER was already busy. A chest pain in Bay 3, a broken ankle in Bay 5, a kid with a fever in the waiting room. She clocked in and dove into the rhythm. Vitals, assessments, IVs, the work she knew how to do. At noon, during a brief lull, one of the newer nurses approached her. A young guy, maybe 25, nervous energy radiating off him. Ms. Whitmore, I just wanted to say, what you did, standing up like that, it mattered. My brother got stopped in his own neighborhood last year. Same kind of situation. He didn't fight it, but seeing you fight made me realize we should have. Claire looked at him. It's not too late. I know. We filed a complaint last week. She nodded. Good. The nurse walked away, and Claire went back to work. But something about the exchange stayed with her. The ripple effect Voss had mentioned. The idea that one person's fight could give others permission to fight too. At the end of her shift, Dr. Patel found her in the break room. How was it, being back? Claire poured herself stale coffee. Good. Normal. That's what you wanted, right? Normal? Yeah. Claire took a sip. But I think I'm done pretending normal is enough. Patel raised an eyebrow. Meaning? Meaning I'm tired of just reacting. I want to do something proactive. Like what? Claire told her about Dr. Torres's email, about the Veterans Advocacy Organization, about the possibility of turning her experience into something that could help others. Patel listened, then smiled. You're going to be busy? Good. I've had enough of sitting still. 3 weeks later, Claire attended her first meeting with Dr. Torres's organization. It was held in a conference room downtown, 15 people around a table, veterans, advocates, lawyers, social workers. They talked about housing discrimination, employment barriers, healthcare access, real problems with real solutions. Claire listened more than she spoke. But when Torres asked for her input on a proposed training program for law enforcement, Claire didn't hesitate. Make it mandatory, not optional, not suggested, required. And make sure it's taught by people who've actually experienced profiling, not just academics reading from slides. Torres nodded. Agreed. Can you help develop the curriculum? Yeah, I can do that. After the meeting, Torres pulled Claire aside. You're good at this. At what? Turning pain into action. A lot of people get stuck in the anger. You're channeling it. Claire thought about that. I'm just tired of feeling powerless. Then keep doing this, because you're not powerless anymore. Claire drove home through early evening traffic, the city lights starting to flicker on against the twilight. When she turned onto Maple Crest Avenue, the street looked the same as always. But it felt different now, less like a place she had to defend and more like a place she'd chosen. She parked in her driveway and got out. Across the street, the young couple waved. Claire waved back. Inside, she made dinner and ate at the table, scrolling through notes from the meeting. Ideas for training modules, contact information for people who could help. The beginning of something that felt bigger than just her story. Her phone buzzed. A news alert. The headline read, Silver Ridge Police Union President Richard Landry sentenced to 4 years in federal prison. Claire opened the article. The judge had cited abuse of power, witness intimidation, and racketeering. Landry's lawyer had argued for leniency. The judge hadn't bought it. Claire set the phone down. 4 years wasn't enough. It never would be. But it was something. Another notification popped up. An email from James Porter, the Marine who'd reached out after the trial. Ms. Whitmore, update. Filed my complaint. The department's opening an investigation. My lawyer thinks we have a good case. Just wanted you to know. Thank you for showing me this was possible, James Clare typed back. James, stay strong. Don't let them wear you down. You deserve better. Claire. She sent it and closed her laptop. Outside, the streetlights glowed warm against the dark. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked. A car door slammed. Life continuing, ordinary and precious. Over the next 2 months, Claire settled into a new rhythm. 3 12-hour shifts at the hospital, 2 days a week working with Dr. Torres's organization, developing training materials, meeting with law enforcement agencies willing to listen. 1 day for herself, running, reading, existing without an agenda. The curriculum they developed was blunt and unflinching. It included video testimonials from veterans who'd been profiled, case studies of interactions gone wrong, role-playing scenarios that forced officers to confront their own biases. Some departments rejected it outright. Others adopted it enthusiastically. Progress was uneven, frustrating, slow, but it was happening. In November, Claire was invited to speak at a law enforcement conference in Chicago. She almost declined. Public speaking wasn't her thing, but Torres convinced her. They need to hear from you, not from me, not from a lawyer, from someone who lived it. So Claire went. She stood on a stage in front of 200 police officers and administrators and told her story. Not the sanitized version, the real one. What it felt like to be questioned in her own driveway, to have her identity dismissed, to spend months looking over her shoulder. When she finished, the room was silent. Then a hand went up. A young officer, maybe 30, black, sitting in the 3rd row. How do we fix it? He asked. I mean, really fix it. Not just policy changes that look good on paper. Claire thought about that. You start by believing people when they tell you something's wrong. You stop defending the system just because you're part of it. And you remember that the badge doesn't make you right. It just gives you power. What you do with that power is up to you. The officer nodded. Others started asking questions. The session ran 20 minutes over. Afterward, a lieutenant approached her. Older guy, gray hair, lines around his eyes that suggested he'd seen things. I've been on the job 32 years, he said. I thought I knew what I was doing. Your talk made me realize I've probably screwed up more times than I want to admit. Claire met his eyes. So what are you going to do about it? I don't know yet, but I'm going to figure it out. That was enough. On the flight home, Claire stared out the window at clouds lit orange by the setting sun. She thought about Cole, about Haynes, about Landry, about all the people who'd tried to make her smaller, quieter, easier to ignore. They'd failed. Not because she was special or particularly brave, but because she'd refused to accept that being treated with dignity was something she had to earn. When the plane landed, Marcus was waiting at the airport. "You didn't have to pick me up," Claire said. "I know, but I wanted to hear how it went." They drove back to Silver Ridge, and Claire told him about the conference, about the questions, about the officer who'd admitted he'd probably made mistakes. Marcus listened, then smiled. "You're making a difference." "Maybe. It's hard to tell. Trust me, you are." Back home, Claire unpacked and made tea, sat at the kitchen table and opened her laptop. Her inbox was full: follow-up emails from the conference, requests for consulting work, messages from people who'd heard her speak and wanted to share their own stories. She answered them one by one, patiently, carefully, knowing that each response mattered to the person who'd sent it. At midnight, she finally closed the laptop and went upstairs, looked out the bedroom window at the quiet street below. Her street, her neighborhood, the place she'd fought for and won. But winning hadn't been the point. The point was refusing to lose herself in the process. December brought the first snow. Claire stood on her porch, watching flakes drift down in the glow of the streetlights. Mrs. Castellano came out to shovel her driveway, and Claire grabbed her own shovel to help. They worked in companionable silence for a while, then Mrs. Castellano spoke. "I should have said something, back when it happened. I should have come over, told those officers they were wrong." Claire leaned on her shovel. "Why didn't you?" "I don't know. Scared, I guess, of making it worse, of getting involved." "A lot of people feel that way." Mrs. Castellano nodded. "But you didn't. And I'm sorry I wasn't braver." Claire looked at her. "You're here now. That counts." They finished the driveways together. When they were done, Mrs. Castellano invited Claire in for hot chocolate. They sat in her kitchen, warming their hands on mugs, talking about nothing important: neighbors, friends, the way things should have been from the start. On Christmas Eve, Claire worked a shift at the hospital. The ER was quieter than usual. A few minor injuries, a case of food poisoning, an elderly man with pneumonia. She treated them all with the same focused care, grateful for work that had clear outcomes. When her shift ended, she drove home through snow-dusted streets. The house was dark when she arrived. She turned on the lights, made herself dinner, and sat alone at the table. It should have felt lonely. Instead, it felt peaceful. Her phone buzzed, a text from Dr. Torres. "Merry Christmas. Thank you for everything you're doing. You're changing lives." Claire typed back, "Trying to." "Merry Christmas." Another text came through, this one from a number she didn't recognize. "Ms. Whitmore, my name is Aisha Franklin. I'm a nurse in Georgia. I was racially profiled by police last month in front of my hospital. I saw your case on the news. I don't know if I should fight it or let it go. Do you have any advice?" Claire stared at the message. She thought about telling Aisha to let it go, to protect herself, to avoid the scrutiny and exhaustion that came with fighting. It would be easier, safer. But then she thought about James Porter, about the young nurse at the hospital, about all the people who'd sent messages saying her case had given them courage. She typed back, "Aisha, I'm not going to tell you what to do. Fighting is hard. It takes a toll. But I will say this. You deserve to be treated with dignity. If you decide to fight, you're not alone. There are people who will help, including me. Let me know what you decide." Aisha's response came within minutes. "Thank you. I think I'm going to fight." "Good. Here's the name of a lawyer who specializes in these cases." Claire sent the contact information, then added, "And Aisha, don't let anyone make you feel like you're asking for too much. You're asking for what everyone deserves. I won't. Thank you." Claire set the phone down and stood, walked to the window. Outside, snow continued to fall, covering the street in white. Clean, quiet, new. She thought about the version of herself who'd stood in that driveway months ago, tired from a long shift, confronted by an officer who'd decided she didn't belong. That version had been angry, scared, determined. This version was all of those things too, but she was also something else. She was free, not because the fight was over, not because justice had been perfect or complete, but because she'd stood her ground when it mattered most, and in doing so, had shown others they could too. The next morning, Claire woke early and went for a run. The streets were still quiet, fresh snow crunching under her feet. She ran past houses decorated with lights, past cars buried under drifts, past the spot where Cole had confronted her all those months ago. She didn't slow down, didn't look back, just kept running, breath clouding in the cold air, muscles burning in the good way. When she got home, she showered and made breakfast, sat at the table with coffee and the newspaper. A small article on page 3 caught her eye. Silver Ridge Police Department announces partnership with Veterans Advocacy Group for Bias Training Initiative. Claire read it twice. Her name wasn't mentioned. Dr. Torres got the credit, which was fine. The work mattered more than the recognition. Her phone rang. Voss. Merry day after Christmas. Same to you. I'm calling because I got a request this morning. National Civil Rights Museum wants to include your case in their permanent exhibit on modern discrimination. They're asking for artifacts, court documents, the body cam footage, personal items. I wanted to check with you before I responded. Claire was quiet for a moment. What would they do with it? Educational programming, interactive displays. The idea is to show people how discrimination plays out in everyday situations, not just historical ones. And they want my permission. They need it. This is your story. You get to decide how it's told. Claire thought about school kids walking through that museum, seeing her face on a screen, hearing about what happened in her driveway. She thought about the conversations it might start, the awareness it might build. Tell them yes, she said, but on one condition. They include resources for people who want to fight back, legal aid contacts, advocacy organizations, hotlines, not just the story, the tools. I'll make sure they do. She hung up and finished her coffee. Outside, neighbors were starting to emerge, shoveling driveways, building snowmen with their kids. Normal life, continuing around her. Claire grabbed her coat and went outside, shoveled her own driveway, waved to Mr. Eng, helped the young couple from Haynes's old house dig out their car. Thank you, the wife said. You didn't have to do that. I know, Claire said, but we're neighbors. That's what we do. The wife smiled. I heard about what happened, with the lawsuit and everything. I'm glad you won. Claire nodded. Me too. It's good to have you here, on this street. It feels safer knowing someone like you is around. Claire wasn't sure what to say to that, so she just smiled and went back to shoveling. That afternoon, she drove to the Veterans Center across town. Dr. Torres had invited her to a New Year's planning session, and Claire wanted to be part of it. The center was busy, vets getting meals, attending counseling sessions, picking up donated clothes. Claire recognized a few faces from previous meetings. They nodded as she passed, some offering quick thanks for her work. The planning session was intense. They mapped out goals for the coming year: legislative advocacy, expanded training programs, partnerships with more police departments. Claire volunteered to lead the training development, and no one objected. By the time the session ended, it was dark outside. Claire said goodbye to Torres and drove home through quiet streets. When she pulled into her driveway, she sat for a moment before getting out. Looked at her house, lights on in the windows, smoke curling from the chimney because she'd started a fire that morning. Home. Really, truly home. She went inside, made dinner, and settled on the couch with a book. Outside, the world kept turning. Inside, Claire Whitmore was exactly where she belonged. New Year's Eve arrived. Claire spent it at the hospital, covering a shift so a coworker with kids could be home. The ER was chaotic. Drunk drivers, fireworks injuries, fights that had escalated. She worked through it all with steady hands and a clear head. At midnight, the hospital erupted in noise. People cheering, horns honking outside, fireworks visible through the windows. Claire stepped out into the ambulance bay, watching the sky light up in bursts of color. Her phone buzzed. Multiple texts coming in at once. Marcus. Happy New Year. Proud of you. Dr. Patel. Thanks for covering tonight. You're the best. Dr. Torres. New year, new fights? Ready? Claire typed back to all of them. Ready. She went back inside and finished her shift. At 6 a.m, exhausted and satisfied, she clocked out and drove home through streets littered with debris from the night's celebrations. The house was cold. She turned up the heat, made coffee, and sat at the table as the sun rose. A new year. A new chapter. Her laptop was open. She pulled up a blank document and started typing. Dear Ms. Franklin, you asked me for advice and I gave you what I could, but I wanted to say something else. Fighting isn't just about winning. Sometimes it's about refusing to accept that the way things are is the way they have to be. You're going to face people who tell you to move on, to let it go, to be grateful it wasn't worse. Don't listen to them. You deserve better, and demanding better isn't asking for too much. I'm here if you need me. Claire Whitmore. She sent it, then opened another blank document. Started drafting a proposal for a peer support network, a way for people going through similar situations to connect, share resources, help each other navigate the legal and emotional challenges. By noon, she had 10 pages. She sent it to Dr. Torres with a note. Thoughts? Torres replied within the hour. Let's build it. Over the next 6 months, they did. The network launched in March, starting small. 20 people in a private online forum, sharing stories and strategies. By May, it had grown to 300. By August, over 1,000. Claire moderated the forum in her spare time, answering questions, connecting people with lawyers, offering encouragement. It was exhausting. It was rewarding. It was necessary. In September, she got a call from a producer at a major news network. They wanted to do a documentary about her case, about the broader issues of racial profiling and police accountability. Claire's first instinct was to say no. She'd avoided media attention for months, preferring to work behind the scenes. But Torres convinced her otherwise. Your face gives the issue a face, Torres said. That matters. So Claire said yes. The filming took 3 months. They interviewed her, Marcus, Voss, Dr. Patel, even Captain Reyes. They went back to Maple Crest Avenue and filmed the driveway where it had all started. The documentary aired in January, almost exactly a year after the confrontation. Claire watched it alone in her living room, feeling strange seeing her own life reflected back at her through someone else's lens. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Her inbox flooded with messages, support, criticism, questions, testimonials. News outlets requested interviews. Advocacy groups wanted her to speak at events. Claire said yes to some, no to most. She was learning to set boundaries, to protect the parts of herself that weren't public. In March, she received a letter from the Department of Veterans Affairs. They were launching a new initiative to support veterans facing discrimination, and they wanted her input on program development. She flew to Washington, D.C., and spent 2 days in meetings with people who actually wanted to listen. It wasn't perfect, bureaucracy never was, but it was progress. On the flight home, Claire stared out the window at clouds and sky and thought about how far she'd come. From standing in her driveway, being told she didn't belong, to sitting in a federal building, shaping policy that would help others. The arc of it felt impossible, but it had happened. One fight at a time, one refusal to back down at a time. When she got back to Silver Ridge, the city looked different, or maybe she looked at it differently. Either way, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Not naive hope, not the kind that ignored reality or pretended problems would solve themselves, but the kind that came from knowing change was possible because she'd lived it. That night, she sat at her kitchen table and wrote in a journal she'd started keeping. A year ago today, I was standing in my driveway, being treated like a criminal. Now I'm helping write federal policy. The world is strange and unfair and sometimes unbearably hard. But it can change. It does change. You just have to be willing to push. She closed the journal and went to bed. Slept soundly. Woke the next morning ready to keep pushing. Because that was the thing about justice. It wasn't a destination. It was a direction. And as long as she kept moving toward it, she was doing what mattered. 2 years after the confrontation, Claire stood in the auditorium at Silver Ridge Community College, looking out at a crowd of 200 people who'd come to hear her speak. Veterans, activists, students, people who'd been profiled and people who wanted to understand. She told them her story, not to center herself but to illustrate a point, that ordinary people facing ordinary injustice could create extraordinary change if they refused to accept less than they deserved. When she finished, a young woman in the front row raised her hand. What do you say to people who think you should have just let it go? That it wasn't worth all the trouble? Claire smiled. I say they're wrong. Because nothing about me, my dignity, my safety, my right to exist in my own home is too small to fight for. And if we start accepting that some injustices are too minor to matter, we've already lost. The room erupted in applause. Afterward, people lined up to talk to her, to thank her, to share their own stories. Claire listened to everyone, gave out contact information for lawyers and advocacy groups, reminded them they weren't alone. The last person in line was a middle-aged black man in a suit. He waited until everyone else had left, then approached. "Miss Whitmore? I'm Detective Harold Morris. I work for Silver Ridge PD." Claire's guard went up instinctively. Morris noticed. "I'm not here officially. I'm here because I wanted to thank you." "For what?" "For making us better. The department resisted the changes at first. A lot of us did. But the training you helped develop, it's working. Officers are thinking differently, acting differently. And I wanted you to know that." Claire studied him. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you deserve to hear it. Not all of us were against you. Some of us were just too scared to speak up. I'm trying to do better." He handed her a business card. "If you ever need anything from the department, call me directly. I'll make sure it gets handled right." Claire took the card. "Thank you." Morris nodded and left. Claire stood alone in the empty auditorium, holding the card, feeling the weight of what it represented. Progress. Imperfect. Incomplete. But real. She drove home through twilight, the city lights starting to glow against the darkening sky. When she pulled onto Maple Crest Avenue, she saw something that made her smile. A for sale sign in front of her house. Not her house. The one next door. And standing in the driveway looking at the property was a young black couple with a toddler. Claire parked and got out. Walked over. "Thinking about buying?" she asked. The woman looked up. "Maybe. Do you live here?" "Next door. I'm Claire." "I'm Jasmine. This is my husband Derek and our son Miles." They shook hands. Miles waved shyly from his father's arms. "What's the neighborhood like?" Derek asked. Claire thought about how to answer that. She could sugarcoat it, pretend everything was perfect, but that wouldn't be honest. "It's good," she said. "Not perfect, but good. And if you move in, you'll have at least one neighbor who's got your back." Jasmine smiled. "That's all we're really looking for." They talked for a few more minutes, then exchanged numbers. As they drove away, Claire stood in her driveway, the same spot where this had all begun, and felt something settle deep in her chest. This was what winning looked like. Not headlines or settlements or documentaries, but a young family feeling safe enough to build a life in a neighborhood that was learning to be better. Claire went inside, made dinner, and sat at her table. Outside, the street was quiet. Inside, she was at peace. Her phone buzzed. A text from Aisha Franklin, the nurse from Georgia, who'd reached out on Christmas Eve. "Won my case. Settlement includes policy changes and a public apology. Thank you for showing me it was possible," Claire typed back. "You did that yourself. I'm proud of you." She set the phone down and looked around her kitchen, her house, her home, the place she'd fought for and won, and now got to share with neighbors who understood what belonging really meant. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever was. But it was hers, and that was enough.